Hello, I'm William Gallagher, and this is 58 Keys, which, as ever, as always, is for writers like you and me who use and who write on Macs, on iPhones, and this time, travelling iPads. Typically, you think I'm right here in my office for 60 or 80 hours a week, but there is a real world out there somewhere, and this time I'm going out and you're coming with me. You're coming with me to London by iPad. I should say, by the way, do subscribe or support 58 Keys on Patreon because, well, there's so much to talk about. Actually, this time, actually, it's practically all effusive. I was just running through the list there. Practically all effusive, practically. So we're driving from Birmingham to London. Good to have your company there. We're spending the day when we get there and actually then driving home, but via Oxford. I'm going to skip how I had to have a 4:30 a.m. alarm because actually that was my Apple Watch. It wasn't the iPad. But I do want to take a moment about that route. Apple Maps on the iPad showed me the way to London and to BAFTA, where my Writers Guild lunch meeting thing was going to be. But actually, in the last couple of years, Apple Maps has added the option for multiple stops. So in one go, I could plan out the whole day's driving, going between three cities, Birmingham, London, Oxford, Birmingham. Plus, you can say on Apple Maps that you want to arrive by a certain time on a certain day. And what Apple Maps will do, Apple Maps on the iPad, will use historical data to estimate what kind of traffic delay you're most likely to get. And it works out the time to leave. So actually, I suppose the iPad is more responsible for my early start than I thought because it was due to it telling me, William, best time in London, traffic these days. I got it when I did because it told me to. Only, you saw me hesitate earlier when I said this is practically all effusive. This is a bit that isn't. On a Mac, if you plan out a route like this on Apple Maps, well, when you're done, you can send it to your iPhone. So it's right there when you plug your phone into your car and head off. You can't do that from the iPad. And I can't fathom why not, what the difference is. I mean, I so completely cannot fathom a reason against it that I've honestly wondered whether I'm just wrong, but apparently not. Still, having planned it all out and decided the different routes and all these things that I need to work out, I'm going to park at a place called Westfield, by the way, a shopping centre that's near the old BBC television centre where I used to work. So actually the route is my home to Westfield and then I'll get the tube across London to BAFTA. Right, okay. So I planned all that out using the iPad, then got into the car, entered my chosen route, into the details, into the iPhone, and away off we go. There's not a lot you can do with an iPad when you're the driver in a car. So let's just fast forward. Although, detail, actually, because I just like this so much, I want to tell you about this. As it turned out, quite extended, traffic delayed drive was accompanied by the 99% Invisible podcast, the Automators podcast, economics of everyday things, articles of interest, and a surprising amount of music as well as all of that. Anyway, Q, parking, Q, TVC, Q, London Underground, and Q only just making it to BAFTA, thereabouts, squeaking in a mere just 4 hours early for the meeting. 4 hours early for that meeting. But remember, this is a regular writing day. So as well as that meeting, there were the normal deadlines. They were coming along and actually I made it, I think, -1 minute for another meeting, but this time a Zoom one. I don't have a cellular iPad, so I had to either tether it to my iPhone to use the phone's internet connection or, coffee shop, writer, find a Wi-Fi spot. In both cases, though, that also meant finding somewhere to sit and work for a protracted period, somewhere with Wi-Fi preferably, and that was safe too. Which brings me to this. Actually, it brings me to the Pret-a-Manger Cafe in Piccadilly, London. But really, it brings me to this. I brought my 14-inch MacBook Pro. I brought it because there was this one thing I'd had problems with using an iPad before. The last time I did it, which admittedly I think was some years ago now. But then there's also this. running into Pret-a-Manger late, having to buy something in order to basically sit down and use their Wi-Fi. I didn't have time to get out the MacBook Pro, boot it up, open it, all that stuff. And sorry, Pret, I also, in that moment, I didn't feel fully safe getting it out. Whereas I could take out my 2021 11-inch iPad Pro in its magic keyboard case, slip it straight out of my bag really quickly, and I figured therefore I could also slip it right back again fast if I felt I needed to. But I'll tell you now, I didn't use the MacBook Pro all day, not at all. Stayed in the bag, just being heavy for a long time. And in this moment, I was on my iPad and I was into the Zoom meeting straight away. I mean, small problem here, I'll admit this. I swear I couldn't remember where the camera was on my iPad. So at first I'm doing that, looking up. Yeah, that's really irritating thing. So, okay, the camera on mine, by the way, is here. It's on the side. I think it's just so well hidden, so well blended into the bezels that I couldn't, sitting there in London, I could not see it. New iPads, by the way, the ones announced by Apple in May 2024, they've moved the camera to, well, how do you describe it? It's an iPad. You can go in any direction. It's kind of effectively the top of the screen if you have the iPad in landscape and the right way around here. But with judicious use of my thumb, trying to work out all this, going over the screen, I figured out where the camera was. We had the meeting, we did our doings, and then it was writing. It was sitting on actually a progressively harder stool. It was buying water at periodic intervals to keep my place, as well as, frankly, the hardest seat for me. As well as that, it was the hardest job for the iPad. I actually can't show you the real version of this because it involves a client's system, but I can tell you the problem and I can tell you what I did, and maybe you can tell me in the comments, please, how you would have done it, how I should have done it, how I could have done it better. Here's the thing. I was writing news stories, right, which meant research, okay, for a start, lots of notes, but then the finished text, and I had to also have at least one image, all of which funnels down then into this client systems to appear on their website as a new article, a new news story. In this case, given what I was writing about, I could get most images I needed by taking a screenshot. And as I have so recently discovered, I love this. What that means is just a quick swipe up from the bottom left. I love that. Why is that so much faster than pressing the right side buttons in exactly the right? Yeah, of course it's faster. There, done. Let's just swipe. Okay. Images for this client have to, I mean, for all clients, I'm sure, they have to be a certain size. So I used Pixelmator on the iPad to create a blank canvas of exactly those dimensions. Then I would copy and paste whatever the images I needed onto that canvas and drag it a little to resize. You can make things smaller, nearly enough, or more often just reframe them. Pixelmator is very good. Pixelmator Pro is much better, but that's only on the Mac. I wish it would come to the iPad. I do also have Affinity Photo on the iPad, which is substantially more powerful than the Pixelmator version that's on the iPad. I haven't used it enough. And we're talking news deadlines here. There isn't really any time, not today, not in this day, to try things out. I actually need to set aside some time, don't I, to explore Affinity Photo more. But then counting that, I find I learn things better, certainly faster, by needing them under some kind of pressure, or at least by having a very specific goal, such as make news images of this size in that format with these edits and this reframing. If I know what I need to do, I tend to learn how to do it. But for this day, I do know I can do all of that in Pixelmator, so I do. And actually the image creation side is fine. I'm pretty much flying along with that. That's not what the problem has been before. The problem has been having created the image, getting it from the iPad onto the client's site. I mean, different clients, different times, but same problems. And actually, it practically had me sobbing on trains sometimes as A, the upload speed would be so bad, which isn't the iPad's fault, but still, and two, getting the client system to accept the image. And that is more of the iPad's fault. I mean, as I say, I can't show you the real system that I was using on this London trip, but actually maybe it's more useful anyway, showing you some alternatives, some real world alternatives, such as the easy one. Drag an image from the Photos app onto Pages, done. Doddle. Move it around if you like, whatever. Drag it into WordPress, harder and inconsistent. That's the thing. Sometimes I can just drag it in. Sometimes nothing happens. I honestly, I do think all of this is much better than it used to be, though. And I think maybe I over worried. Plus, I then also used an app that I got ages ago and hadn't got around to using and turned out to be really useful. It's a shelf app. A shelf app called Yoink. I got it years ago, tried it, seemed fine. You pop things on its shelf, like images, and then they stay there so that you can later drag them off the shelf and into some other different app. I don't know now, because I've been able to drag between, do we still need shelf apps? I'm not sure. But at times on this day, I was using Yoink full screen, and at other times it was in slide over. And that's the thought. Throughout all of this, actually, I was mostly working in, is it 3/4 of the iPad screen? Because I also had Slack, the communications app, open on the last quarter on the side with messages back and forth from the client, from the editor. So Slack to the right of me, text to the left, Yoink floating around, and Pixelmator somewhere in the background, plus OmniFocus, my to-do app, plus Fantastical, my schedule. I do actually think that all of this would have been faster on my Mac, I'm going to say that. But even under news deadlines on my iPad, it was fast enough. And actually, surely the speed of the Mac has to be at least in part because I'm so used to working on it. If I did this kind of trip more often, then maybe the iPad would be all I need. It was certainly all I needed for this part today. 4 hours, 1 sandwich, 2 waters, and 1 really nice hot chocolate later. My backside was in agony. Unfortunately, it was time for the Guild meeting. In the meeting, well, I think, did I refer to some email or other during it? But nothing much. The thing is, we're opening up a MacBook Pro. I mean, the lid, it puts a barrier between you and whoever you're meeting. An iPad can just stay flat on the table. Not in this meeting, as it happens, but in another recent Writers Guild meeting, well, I've done that. Typing on the glass, actually, so that I could just leave the iPad unobtrusively flat on the table. But back to this day. The meeting's run long, what a shock, and I have to get back to writing deadlines. This time, though, the technical thing that I have learned, and that if you don't already know, I really want you to, is lots of places have Wi-Fi. You're not just stuck to one. After 4 hours on a stall in Pret-a-Manger in Piccadilly, I indulged myself with 10 minutes in a huge Waterstones bookshop a bit further down the road and learned that it had a cafe. All right, I know I just had lunch, but it was a hot day, a drink, Wi-Fi, it was irresistible. As it happens, it turned, just for whatever reason, it turned out an easier late afternoon writing than usual. So here I am in Waterstones reading the New York Times. Later on, actually, I read a book for a short while. I also watched the start of a YouTube video, but yeah, time was ticking on. There wasn't a lot of minutes left for anything more. So back through the underground, back on the motorway, brief stop for Chinese food. Let's give you all the flavour here, details. You haven't eaten in a while. You've got to join me this. Chinese food at a motorway service station, and then I'm off to Oxford. One mistake. If I'd thought ahead, I would have made a note of what the battery charge I had left after all this was, but I didn't. So I can't tell you. But I think the fact that I completely forgot to pay any attention to the battery level means that actually the iPad's battery power was more than enough for what I did today. I think I made the image stuff a bit, talking to you here, a bit melodramatic. There are all these worries. You don't forget old problems. So even now, actually having had none of those difficulties on this day, or at least none that held me up, I do know that I could just take the iPad the next time I go to London. Yeah, let me play with Affinity Photo first, just a bit more. In the meantime though, thank you for joining me on this journey. That's it for this edition of 58 Keys. Thanks for watching. You're very good company in a car, by the way. Now take care of yourself, write more, and I'll see you soon.